Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo, and good morning, Rufai. How's everybody? That's me.
Where's our Wujale?
Well, we're looking hopefully soon. We wouldn't want to reach a year without knowing who the next king is. It's not good. It's not good at all, but we're hoping very, very soon. Very soon. Good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you what is happening around the world. Now, when it was first announced 4 months ago, the prospect of a board of peace focused just on Gaza. But it's just become broader, and that's as US President Donald Trump has unveiled his board of peace at the World Economic Forum in Davos. At the signing ceremony, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, delivered a short PowerPoint presentation that showed his vision for how Gaza could be redesigned, saying Gaza would go from being a war zone to an investment opportunity. Now, for his part, Trump said that his board of peace would be one of the most consequential bodies ever created in the history of the world. The thing is, some would argue that the world already has one of those, the United Nations. Now, Trump did say that his work, or the work that his board would be doing, would be in conjunction with the United States. But could Trump's board of peace be a threat to the UN? Well, let's take a closer look. Alrighty. So firstly, the United Nations Authority, essentially it rests on multilateralism and international law, especially through the UN Security Council and definitely the United Nations General Assembly. Now, a parallel peace mechanism like the Board of Peace, dominated or just chaired by Donald Trump, such as this Board of Peace that we're looking at, it could signal two things. Firstly, it would signal the fact that there would be a reduced reliance on UN mediation and a preference for power-based diplomacy over rules-based order. So a bit shaky there. And that could weaken the UN politically, especially in conflicts where enforcement is already fragile. And we see that from Sudan to the Middle East. Now, secondly, the creation of the Board of Peace does illustrate a broader US shift away from the United States, or the United Nations, rather. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise to any of us, because we know Trump has already withheld funding from the UN agencies. He's withdrawn from many UN agencies altogether. He has criticized the UN as an ineffective or biased institution, and he has continued to favor ad hoc coalitions over UN-led processes. Now, in that case, a Gaza Peace Board would fit a pattern of bypassing the United Nations rather than reforming it, particularly sidelining bodies that are linked to Palestinian governance and humanitarian coordination. We are already seeing that in the handling of Gaza. Now, that creates certain risk of fragmenting the already existing UN-led peace efforts. Again, if you look at Gaza as an example, the United Nations already plays roles by coordinating humanitarian aid. We already know that they already have been creating peace frameworks. Trump's Board of Peace, in its creation, could then unfortunately create conflicting peace frameworks. It could also confuse lines of authority, and it could also force regional actors to choose sides. In a unified world, that is not something you would want to happen. But let's not forget that this is still the United Nations. Now, despite its flaws, the UN does have legal legitimacy under international law. The UN also has almost universal membership. Almost all of the countries in the world are under the UN Charter. And it also has control over sanctions, peacekeeping, mandates, and recognition internationally. So those are the United Nations strengths. However, if we take a look at the bigger picture here, this isn't just about Gaza. It's about who has the power to set the global order. So if we're looking at the UN model, we know that the United Nations has collective decision-making, but unfortunately, some would say that it is slow. However, it's still legitimate. And then if we're looking over to Trump and his model, this Board of Peace, it's transactional diplomacy. It may be faster, but it's selective. And that creates another issue in terms of legitimacy when you're looking at Trump's involvement on the world scene. Now, if replicated elsewhere, that shift could also erode multilateral governance globally, not just in the Middle East. So it has huge global ramifications. Now, to be clear, Trump cannot legally replace the United Nations, but he can can diminish its authority and relevance, especially if other superpowers in the world follow his footsteps. So something to bear in mind. Let's move on to another story, because I do like it when we get to talk about sports and geopolitics. Now, this time we're talking about the Africa Cup of Nations, recently concluded last Sunday. Now, Morocco's King Mohammed VI has moved to calm tensions after the AFCON final, and he's called for unity across Africa. Now, in a statement, the king said that football must remain a space for fraternity, brotherhood, respect, and African unity. That's King Mohammed VI of Morocco, his words now. His intervention underscores how AFCON now extends far beyond sports. Now, the final between Morocco and Senegal was marked by controversy and fan unrest, briefly spilling into diplomatic spaces, prompting swift political messaging. An example of that was what we've just read. Now, football continues to remain a tool for soft diplomacy and power. Now, Morocco, for example, Morocco does use its ability to use football in order to foster partnerships and its own diplomatic reach in West and Central Africa. And Senegal is also able to leverage its sporting success to bolster its image as a stable democratic power. And host nations use AFCON as proof of infrastructural readiness and political competence. So a lot to think about there. And in short, essentially what we're saying is that what we saw at AFCON wasn't really just about football. It was about national image, about continental influence, and how sports has become a proxy for political power across Africa. Now, kind of staying with the African continent, but dabbling outside, ActionAid UK, it's a charity, and it says that it will rethink its traditional child sponsorship model as part of its efforts to decolonize its work on global aid. Now, the charity's new leadership says allowing mostly well-off Western donors to pick individual children to support can reinforce paternalistic and racialized dynamics. It also plans to phase in a model centered on community-led funding and solidarity by 2028. Now, about a third of its income now comes from sponsorship, but future fundraising will focus more on grassroots partnerships and unrestricted support that gives local communities greater control. Something, again, to think about. Let's move on to our newspaper headlines. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. Now, This Day does report that the Chief Judge of Rivers State has halted moves by the House of Assembly to start impeachment proceedings against the Governor, Siminalayi Fubara, and his Deputy, Professor Ngozi Odu, citing subsisting interim orders of the State High Court and pending appeals that legally restrain him from constituting a 7-man investigative panel. We also have the Daily Independent, which reports that Shell is weighing up to a $20 billion investment in new investments in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. That's after a previous successful $7 billion deal following the president's directive to gazette targeted incentives for the Bonga Southwest project. Moving on to The Punch. The Punch does report that the United States has raised concerns yet again over Nigeria's ability to protect Christian communities following the abduction of 177 worshippers in Kaduna State. Now, while the federal government continues to say that it has intensified military operations, it's strengthened intelligence coordination and will track and prosecute perpetrators, it continues to emphasize that insecurity affects all citizens, regardless of faith. Now, the Vanguard has politics. So you've got Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde has reaffirmed his commitment to the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, and that's after he met with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He stated that he is comfortable in the party he currently is and supports a bipartisan approach to addressing national issues. Well, The Guardian this morning does report that the federal government has taken delivery of 500,000 smart electricity meters. This is part of a 3.4 million unit rollout under the World Bank funded by DISREP, and it also warned DISCO officials that extorting consumers for installations is illegal and punishable. Well, let's move over to our UK papers. We've got The Guardian first up, and The Guardian has a picture headline showing this young 5-year-old boy who's arriving home from preschool in Minnesota, and he was taken by federal agents along with his father to a detention facility in Texas. Now, he is the 4th student from his Minneapolis suburb, in his suburb alone, to be detained by immigration officers in recent weeks. Now, after detaining his father, ICE agents took the boy to his home and asked the people people inside the home to open the door. And reports say that the people felt as though the ICE agents were using this boy as bait so that they would open the door and then collect the rest of the people inside. That door wasn't opened, and unfortunately, the young boy was taken into detention. Just horrible news there. And moving on to the Metro. The Metro does have images of Donald Trump's glitzy Middle East tourist vision. That is what we're seeing on the front page. The Metro does ask whether or not they are Gaza or Gaga. Again, very interesting times ahead for the Middle East. And lastly, when we take a look at the Times, it's the picture headline story we are looking at. So it does show actress Wumi Mosaku in a stunning yellow dress that, as Sinners, is nominated for a record-breaking 16 Academy Awards. Now, the previous record for nominations was 14, and that was held by 3 films: All About Eve, Titanic, and La La Land. So huge congratulations to Sinners, and we're hoping they do bring a lot of awards home. So these are your newspaper headlines and your world brief. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Congrats to Sinners. I can also remember to saw the movie like a gazillion times.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we say? Trump's Board of Peace. So there are a lot of things about Trump a lot of people do not know, but obviously there's something missing. There's the quest for affirmation. There's the lack of self-belief. At first, is with the Nobel Prize. The reason why he's banging on about the Nobel Prize is that he cannot understand that an African-American called Barack Obama won the Nobel Prize and he's not won the Nobel Prize. The Board of Peace, he's looking and saying, oh, in history, a former American president brought about the United Nations. I can have a Board of Peace. Board of Peace or Board of Peace, a piece of ice like Greenland. So the next thing he says, a Board of Peace. Then he constitutes a Board of Peace that you know that directly contravenes what the UN is doing. And this is the same you. You set up a multilateral agency. But this is the same you that pulled America out of about, is it 66 multilateral agencies,
yes,
just about a couple of weeks ago. But you go ahead, you set up yours. And you put a price tag for $1 billion each. You tax people. I mean, what is wrong with this man? What has the world become? I mean, what has America given to us in the world? I mean, we look at America as a bastion of democracy, but today, if I hear any American mention the word death, let alone democracy, I'll mock that person. What have they given to the world? This is not going to work. It's just going to fail like most of his plans in the first time failed. And when he leaves, he'll take it away with him. And his supporters say that's his legacy. But it upends the world order. It's the time of the world that we are wasting that is hurtful. But obviously, because he knows he cannot do that rubbish with the likes of the Canadian Prime Minister, so he writes a message. Dear Mark Carney, you cannot be part of the Board of Peace because people will not agree with you. So the bigger joke is on American people. I am happy that that charity organization has decided to stop that rubbish. What it's called poverty porn that they normally do for us. For me, I think it was UNICEF or United Nations. It was UNICEF. I couldn't get my eyes off the fly. You see, when they say, please donate $1 for Kajuru or for Tutu in Zambia. Yeah. Tutu in Zambia is ill and he has this, and then you now see the fly. The fly will not perch on Tutu's eyes. Yeah. That's the plight of an African child. $10 every month can save the life. I mean, what a joke. So I'm happy they've decided, you know, because it just pretty much reminds me of how the Belgians used to take pictures of Africa in circuses around the world then and pitch them up against animals. This is sad.
All right, so Save the Children started it last year by abolishing this type of fundraising for children, and it's instructive because they were one of the earliest charity organizations that started this mode of raising funds, attaching a sponsor to a particular child to sponsor their education. And now ActionAid has told that line. What they're saying is that they are rethinking their funding model, and that the reason they're doing this is that old model perpetuates racism, because you're there, you know, there's this picture you have on your mind that is a poor African child who has black skin, and you are doing them a favor. You know, I mean, it's good that you're giving, but it's the way that it's being done. And so you can give charity with dignity. And I think that's the message that's being passed. And perhaps this would be the new, you know, order for charity organizations. And I think it goes along with a lot of people who want to raise funds, and in doing so, do it in such a way that strips the recipient of dignity. And so what they're looking more towards is projects, so fund communities. In fact, they say that, and this is a criticism for a number of charity organizations in the UK, that they usually spend a lot of money on administration. And that's what they've said, that sometimes the money spent on managing engagements through letters between the sponsors and their beneficiaries is so high that they could use that money or channel it to better things. And so welcome development. Hopefully other charity organizations can toe that line. Now, the big one about Trump is Russia being on that board.
Yes.
A number of countries in Europe have declined the invitation, even though President Trump has said, oh, many people are waiting to join the board of peace. But actually, a number of them have declined, saying that they cannot imagine themselves, when you talk about peace, on the same table as Russia, especially with what they're doing in Ukraine, including Ukraine itself. So I don't know how this would work. You know, we've brought up the United Nations conversation. Many countries already signed up to that. Trump in himself has said he doesn't believe in a lot of these multilateral institutions. So you then wonder what is his agenda for setting up the board of peace. On paper, it looks like a good thing for him to tick that box that he's promoting peace. But in reality, when you look at the fine details, it looks more like more division than bringing people together.
Yeah.
Okay, quickly. King Mohammed VI of Morocco saying that, look, African brotherhood is what will prevail at the end of the day. And the success of Morocco hosting the AFCON is a success for all African countries. And that the ties among African nations cannot be, broken. Now, he was speaking against the background of the controversy, the drama, the chaos, the confusion that attended particularly the final match between Senegal and Morocco, where there was an issue about a foul that Senegal argued against and a penalty that was given after 90 minutes, and then the Senegalese had to walk off the pitch. But at the end of the day, Senegal won the second time that they will be winning the AFCON medal. And now the king has come in to now make conciliatory statements. I think that, you know, that's a very important statesmanly intervention by the King of Morocco, considering the fact that Morocco is one of the three countries that have now been given the fiat to host the World Cup in the year 2030, along with Portugal and Spain. And of course, the residual point for me is the fact that Morocco was able to showcase itself very well as a country that can host big-ticket events, whether it's the stadiums that they have in Agadir, Fez, Casablanca, Tangier. They've been able to showcase themselves very well. The transportation, you know, and all of that, the tourism potential. So I think that, we should note all of that. And AFCON, in my view, was very successful. As for the board of peace, now, initially, the focus was on demilitarization and rebuilding of Gaza as part of the 20-point peace plan proposed by President Trump. However, it was on the basis of that the United Nations endorsed it and gave it international legitimacy in November 2025. But then President Trump goes to Davos, and he has now shown that he has his other plans. He wants to make it an open-ended thing to address conflicts, perhaps consistent with his dream of being the ultimate peacemaker in the world. But we should pay special attention to the objections by some of the countries. Yes. Britain says, for example, it cannot sit in the same room with Putin. Yes. And it is ironic to have extended the invitation to Russia, the same country that is causing war in Ukraine. Now, Ukraine also says it cannot be in the same room with Russia, so forget it. That's out of the question. Norway and France are saying, what are the implications for the United Nations. Yes. How does the United Nations fit into all of this? And then, of course, there's the issue of $1 billion that you have to pay. You know, you have to pay $1 billion to become a permanent member after initial 3-year membership. And it's Trump that is going to control the money himself, unilateral, along with his son-in-law and with his appointees. So some other countries have raised questions about corruption. And China says, well, we have received the invitation, but we have not made up our minds yet. So this is the issue here, the implications in terms of legitimacy and in terms of corruption. And Trump looking for another job after leaving office. You know, so those are the issues.
If you're not going to pay, Azerbaijan will pay. Azerbaijan.
Well, the countries that showed interest are from Asia, from Persian Gulf, and Latin America. Yeah, no an African country there. $1 billion. Anyway, Adefemi, thank you. Okay, we need to release you so that you go and sort out your Djibouti matter. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, we'll be talking to Victoria Etamesi, Director of Voter Education for the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
My baba, they always say, for market, every day gets your own wahala. Sometimes people go on scam you. But Baba say, no be by gra. You must cool down, dey sharp. Because with OPay payment, your money go enter sharp, no story. But inside market, anything fit happen. One day, we no see phone again. My baba remember OPay USSD lock, dial *955*131#. Baba press am, lock account. From market woman to driver, from small boy to big man. Now OPay, they protect people like us. My baba fit sell, press phone, collect POS, and still they teach me price. And when they don't tire am, go just tap OPay night guard. We no fear for this our hustle life. Now OPay be the people payment shield.
Good morning. Today's weather will be sunny with a high of 31 degrees.
Alexa, music please.
Playing workout music.
Striving for mastery? You need speed, precision, and clarity of purpose. They all add up. Talent is not enough. You've got to prove that you're able to take advantage of unlimited opportunities when they come. And to do that, you need plenty of data. Scratch that. You need unlimited data. And there's no better provider of unlimited data
Access granted.
than your all-powerful Glow router.
Whether home or office, enjoy unlimited data on a Glow router. Dial *312#.
You know, I've got unlimited eyes.
Glow Unlimited.
I'm still watching.
In most parts of the world, girl child are not recognized in a family. I hope all this problem holding down a girl child did not hold me down.
The idea behind the project is to identify schools that we think the parents are not economically empowered to sponsor their children to schools.
In demonstration of our commitment to reducing that number, we've come here today to provide some of the essentials that we believe would help the children in school. We worked with different schools in 5 states across the country, and we reached out to 15,000 children.
I want to be a food scientist, and Polaris Bank is helping me realize this dream. I'm perfectly excited.